Hey guys, what's up? Jake with Legacy 4x4 here again, and today we're going to be doing some do-it-yourself tube fenders on the back of my Jeepster Commando. So my Jeepster's got a pretty wide fender in the back because I had to cut out a lot of the old sheet metal just to clear it out of rust. So it looks really cool, it's very aggressive, I love the way it looks, but it does mean that there's a large space that has to be covered. I've been doing a ton of body work to the Jeep. I'm not going to do a big video on it because it would just be hours and hours of me hammering metal and welding in spot holes and pinhole rust and all that kind of stuff. It's not entertaining. So instead, you guys will just see chunks of major projects, and then I'll kind of talk about what I've done so far to get to that point. Alright, so moving on to the matter at hand. Today, like I said, we're doing tube fenders for the rear of my Jeep. These are going to be pretty straightforward tube fenders. To make these, I used 1.5" 095 wall DOM that I get at my metal supplier. A stick of this cost about $120 after tax, if I remember correctly, which is not unreasonable. I also am going to use some 4" by 1/8" flat bar. That flat bar ran me about $30 after tax, and so the overall cost of this project is about $150, which is not bad considering the custom fenders. Alright, so after doing that body work, the actual steps to making these tube fenders are pretty straightforward. I do use Bentech Pro, I have it on my computer upstairs, and I use that to do most of my measurement and design for all of my tube work. Right. So I came out to my Jeep and I took some basic measurements and I kind of ran through my head the design I wanted to go through. I then took that design out to Bentech, plugged in the numbers that I got, and then pushed out a very simple tube fender design. The idea here is pretty much just a hoop that follows the body lines that I've already created and then bends in and gives about 4" of offset away from the body. The tube will then be supported in other areas with little 4" sections that I've notched out to tie one end into the tube and then one end into that 2x2 angle. That was pretty straightforward design and should not take very long to make. Part of this project, I did make myself a new bender cart. I wanted to relocate my tube bender off of my work table and onto its own individual cart. I also just recently picked up the Rogue Fabrication Versanotcher, and I wanted a place to mount that. And so I just wanted like one standalone tube bending and notching station in my garage. Pretty straightforward. It's got a shelf for the bender to sit on. It's got a jut for the Versanotcher to mount to, and then it's got a space for a toolbox for my tube bending and notching specific tools to mount on. So the first thing I had to do was bend all this tube. I did take special precaution as I was bending it to make sure that I bent on the right plane because there are 2 different planes of bending on this. So I took my time, measured twice, checked all the rotations, and before I put it in the tube bender to bend it, I made sure that it would bend out and bend in the correct direction for whichever side of the Jeep I was working on. What I did not want to do was accidentally mess that up and then have scrapped an entire stick of tube trying to do this. After bending on the tube, the next step was to make my support pieces. But these pieces were a little bit too small to fit into the jaws of the Versanotcher and not deflect at all. So what I did is I had some of the scrap tube that was left over after bending, and I'd place it in the Versanotcher, notch out one end of it, and then I'd take it over to my slugger chop saw, and I would cut it to 4". And I did that and I made a total of 6 supports for both sides, so 12 total supports. Alright, so I totally made a mistake, guys. I forgot to take any video of me welding and placing the tube onto the body of the Jeep. A relatively straightforward process though, as you can imagine. So all I did is I roughly laid it into place how it was supposed to look, and then I figured out where I wanted all my supports to go, roughly. I tacked those into place, and then I placed the actual bent tube into place, tacked it on, and then I just kind of finessed it a little bit to get it exactly where I wanted. Final welded in both sides, and then moved on. Now that I've got all the tube work done, now it was time to skin the outside of this tube to give it a nice flow into the body of the Jeep. I placed a piece of flat bar on top of the tube fenders, and then I began to clamp it into place in a few areas. I wanted to get the flat bar as close to the tube as I could so I could get a nice even weld. So I clamped it along the horizontal portion first, did a few tack welds along the way to make sure it all stayed in place, and then as I got to my curved edges, what I did is I simply just pressed down on it with my body, kind of forced it generally to where I wanted it to go, and then using clamps, I then pinched it into place on top of the tube to hold it down. Finish these fenders off. I do have to do a little bit more work on them. They're not 100% done, but that work is going to come a little later on in the Jeep. So the edges are not perfectly aligned with the Jeep body just due to some imperfections. So what I'm going to do is when I get to the point where I'm doing Bondo, I will smooth out the transition from the Jeep body to the fender, and then from the fender to the tube as I go, just with a little bit of body filler and seam sealer. I'll show you guys all that later. I'm going to do a whole video on body filling using Bondo, so stick around to see how those actually end up. But that's all that I can do for now. That's all I'm going to do with any metal work on this. Alright, so that's it for today, guys. Pretty straightforward project. It took me about 7 hours total to do both sides, and that's all the cleanup and all the design and everything like that. Cost about $150 for a stick of tube and for the flat bar that I used to skin it. So overall, not too expensive of a project either. Very fulfilling, very fun little project though. I tell you, it really does give a much better look to the rear of my Jeep now. It's starting to really all come together. Also, make sure to check the Instagram page out. It's Legacy 4x4 and Off-Road. I'll put a link to it in the description. Matt and I are a little bit more active on the Instagram page than we were in the past, and we're trying to keep more updated photos of things as we go along with stuff. So you'll see stuff there prior to making it to YouTube. As always, thanks for watching. Take care.